For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 1224 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 73, House Resolution 1224. Resolved that at any time after adoption of this resolution, the Speaker may, pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 18, declare the House resolved into the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for consideration of the bill H.R. 7567 to provide for the reform and continuation of agricultural and other programs of the Department of Agriculture through fiscal year 2031 and for other purposes. The first reading of the bill shall be dispensed with. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Agriculture or their respective designees. After general debate, the bill shall be considered for amendment under the 5-minute rule. In lieu of the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Agriculture now printed in the bill, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 119-22, modified by the amendment printed in Part A of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution, shall be considered as adopted in the House and in the Committee of the Whole. The bill as amended shall be considered as the original bill for the purpose of further amendment under the 5-minute rule and shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. Section 2. A. No further amendments to H.R. 7567 as amended shall be in order except those printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution and amendments en bloc described in Section 3 of this resolution. B. Each further amendment printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules shall be considered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and an opponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. C. All points of order against further amendments printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules or against amendments en bloc described in Section 3 of this resolution are waived. Section 3. It shall be in order at any time for the chair of the Committee on Agriculture or his designee to offer amendments en bloc consisting of further amendments printed in Part B of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution not earlier disposed of. Amendments en bloc offered pursuant to this section shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for 20 minutes, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Agriculture or their respective designees, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question in the House or in the Committee of the Whole. Section 4. At the conclusion of consideration of H.R. 7567 for amendment, the committee shall rise and report the bill as amended to the House with such further amendments as may have been adopted. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended, and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one motion to recommit. Section 5. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 2616, to require public elementary and middle schools that receive funds under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 to obtain parental consent before changing a minor's gender markers, pronouns, or preferred names on any school form or sex-based accommodations, including locker rooms or bathrooms. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived in lieu of the amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Education and Workforce, now printed in the bill, an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 119-26 shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended, and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Education and Workforce or their respective designees, and 2, one motion to recommit. Section 6. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the concurrent resolution, Senate Concurrent Resolution 33, setting forth the congressional budget for the United States government for fiscal year 2026 and setting forth the appropriate budgetary levels for fiscal years 2027 through 2035. All points of order against consideration of the concurrent resolution are waived. The concurrent resolution shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the concurrent resolution are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the concurrent resolution to adoption without intervening motion or demand for division of the question, except 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Budget or their respective designees. Section 7. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill Senate 1318 to direct the American Battle Monuments Commission to establish a program to identify American Jewish service members buried in United States military cemeteries overseas under markers that incorrectly represent their religion and heritage and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. An amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 119-27, modified by the amendment printed in Part C of the report of the Committee on Rules accompanying this resolution, shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided among and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary or their respective designees, and the chair and ranking minority member of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to commit. Section 8. In the engrossment of House Amendment to Senate 1318, the clerk shall A. add the text of H.R. 1919 as passed by the House as new matter at the end of the text proposed to be inserted by the House amendment. B. Assign appropriate designations to provisions within the engrossment of the text proposed to be inserted by the House. C. Conform cross-references and provisions for short titles within the engrossment of the text proposed to be inserted by the House. And D. Be authorized to make technical corrections to include corrections in spelling, punctuation, page and line numbering, section numbering, and insertion of appropriate headings within the engrossment of the text proposed to be inserted by the House. Section 9. It shall be in order at any time through the legislative day of May 1, 2026, for the Speaker to entertain motions that the House suspend the rules as though under Clause 1 of Rule 15. The Speaker or his designee shall consult with the minority leader or his designee on the designation of any matter for consideration pursuant to this section. Section 10. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill H.R. 1346 to amend the Clean Air Act with respect to the ethanol waiver for reed vapor pressure under that act and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. An amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 119-28 shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 11. In the engrossment of H.R. 7567, the clerk shall A. await the disposition of H.R. 1346, B. add the text of H.R. 1346 as passed by the House as new matter at the end of H.R. 7567, C. Assign appropriate designations to provisions within the engrossment. D. Conform cross-references and provisions for short titles within the engrossment. And E. Be authorized to make technical corrections to include corrections in spelling, punctuation, page and line numbering, section numbering, and insertion of appropriate headings within the engrossment.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 hour.
Mr. Speaker, for the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, adopted.
Mr. Speaker, last night the Rules Committee met and reported a rule, House Resolution 1224, providing for consideration of H.R. 7567, the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026, to be considered under a structured rule. The rule provides for 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on Agriculture or their respective designees. Provides for 1 motion to recommit and makes 57 amendments in order. S. 1318, the Foreign Intelligence Accountability Act, to be considered under a closed rule. The rule provides for 1 hour of debate, equally divided among and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on Judiciary and their respective designees, and the chair and ranking member of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence or their respective designees, and provides 1 motion to commit. H.R. 2616, the Stop Indoctrination and Protecting Kids Act, to be considered under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on Education and Workforce of their respective designees, and provides 1 motion to recommit. S. Con Res. 33, setting forth the congressional budget for the United States government for fiscal year 2026 and setting forth the appropriate budgetary levels for fiscal year 2027 through 2035 to be considered under a closed rule. The rule provides for 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on the Budget and their respective designees, and H.R. 1346, the Nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act of 2025 to be considered under a closed rule. The rule provides 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce of their respective designees, and provides 1 motion to recommit. Additionally, the rule provides that in the engrossment of H.R. 7567, the clerk shall add the text of H.R. 1346, should it pass the House, as new matter at the end of H.R. 7567. The rule also provides that in the engrossment of S. 1318, the clerk shall add the text of H.R. 1919 as passed by the House as new matter at the end of the House amendment to S. 1318. Finally, the rule allows the Speaker to entertain motions to suspend the rules at any time through the legislative day on May 1st, 2026. Mr. Speaker, we're here today to debate the rule on 5 pieces of legislation, beginning with H.R. 7567, the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026. Mr. Speaker, our country's farmers and ranchers are currently experiencing years of high input costs, shrinking margins, and uncertainty heading into the growing season. Misguided policy decisions from the previous administration have led to overregulation and consolidation, leaving the American producer to pay the price. However, Mr. Speaker, through the body's work on H.R. 1, we achieved the first meaningful investments in the farm safety net since 2002. We brought integrity back to our nutrition programs, and we provided relief to our farming families through tax cuts. H.R. 7567 builds on the accomplishments of H.R. 1 and completes the long-delayed Farm Bill process, addressing the remaining farm country needs. H.R. 7567 reinforces the farm safety net, allowing our producers the certainty they need to endure unpredictable markets, volatile weather, and rising input costs. Strengthening ARC and PLC, expanding disaster assistance tools, and improving support for specialty crops gives producers the stability needed to keep producing the safest, most abundant food supply in the world. The bill reaffirms our nation's commitment to locally led, science-based conservation practices through improvements to programs like EQIP, CSP, and CRP. Promoting precision agriculture and science-based practices helps protect our natural resources while keeping working lands productive for generations to come. Additionally, H.R. 7567 modernizes trade and global food assistance, codifying the move of the Food for Peace program to the USDA, streamlining Food for Peace authorities, and reinvesting in proven export promotion programs strengthens U.S. competitiveness abroad while ensuring American commodities remain central to feeding vulnerable populations worldwide. H.R. 7567 bolsters the future of American agriculture by improving access to farm credit, especially for those beginning young and small farmers. This farm bill ensures they have the capital they need to build and sustain their operations. Mr. Speaker, this bill is centered on affordability and is a win for rural America. Investments in broadband, child care, health care, workforce needs, and critical water and infrastructure projects strengthen our rural communities and give them the support to thrive in the years to come. The Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026 delivers for our producers, strengthens our rural communities, and protects the security of America's food supply. This is thoughtful legislation that has culminated from years of listening to farmers, ranchers, and families across our country and responds to current realities with real solutions. I'd like to thank my colleagues and all the staff for the work that went into the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026, and I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this legislation. Moving on to S 1318, the Foreign Intelligence Accountability Act. Mr. Speaker, this would authorize Section 702 for 3 years. I want to be clear, we cannot allow Section 702 to expire at a moment when our adversaries are expanding their capabilities, accelerating their operations, and exploiting every gap in our intelligence posture. Allowing this authority to expire would leave the United States blind to threats that move at the speed of the modern conflict. Section 702 allows the United States government to collect intelligence on foreign nationals located overseas. I repeat, foreign nationals located overseas who are reasonably believed to possess foreign intelligence information. The FBI can only access FISA 702 data if the foreign Section 702 target is relevant to an existing open, predicated full national security investigation. Section 702 cannot be used to target any U.S. person at home or abroad. That prohibition is explicit and reinforced by multiple layers of oversight. While Section 702 was first authorized in 2008 and has been reauthorized since with bipartisan support, it certainly has not been perfect. To account for needed reforms, Congress passed the Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act in 2024, the largest FBI and FISA reform in decades. This law mandated 56 different reforms, including strict limitations on FBI queries involving U.S. persons and a severe reduction in the reduction of FBI personnel with access to 702 data. Additionally, to address concerns of the FBI's compliance on U.S. person queries, RISA required the Bureau to provide an annual report detailing any non-compliant query and what accountability measures were imposed on each FBI person that were determined to have conducted a non-compliant query. This has led to 100% of queries on U.S. persons being reviewed by the National Security Division and the FBI's Office of Internal Auditing. These reforms were not symbolic, they were structural, enforceable, and designed to ensure that Section 702 remains both effective and accountable. A quick example of effectiveness can be seen when comparing 2021 FBI queries, which numbered 2.9 million, to 2025 queries, which numbered 7,413. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, this bill contains additional reforms that Congress has worked to include over the last few weeks. Failing to reauthorize this authority, which allows us to stop terrorist attacks on United States soil, would be a massive setback, one that our adversaries would exploit immediately. The time is now to reauthorize Section 702. Next, Mr. Speaker, we have H.R. 2616, the Stopping Indoctrination and Protecting Kids Act. This legislation addresses an important issue facing our country today: protecting a parent's right to be informed and involved in conversations regarding their children's education and what is happening inside their classroom. The Stopping Indoctrination Protecting Kids Act does that. It would prohibit any federally funded public elementary or middle school from changing a child's name, pronoun, or access to facilities such as bathrooms or locker rooms without parental consent. Again, Mr. Speaker, we're talking about elementary and middle schools. This legislation emphasizes the fundamental role of parents in making sensitive decisions regarding their children's identity and accommodations in school. This legislation responds to recent developments across the country where parental rights are being trampled on in favor of a progressive agenda that is completely out of touch with the average American family. This is an urgent moment for Congress to stand up for parents and children and reinforce the critical need for parental engagement and awareness in their child's education. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, we have S-Con Res 33, setting forth the congressional budget for the United States government for fiscal year 2026 and setting forth the appropriate budgetary levels for fiscal years 2027 through 2035. This legislation would unlock the budget reconciliation process to fully fund both immigration and customs enforcement and customs and border protection through early 2029. continuing to deliver on the GOP-led Congress's promise to ensure our borders are secure and the brave men and women of ICE and CBP have the necessary resources to do so. Over the last 18 months, President Trump has delivered on his promise to America to secure the southern border, deport violent illegal aliens, and support the law enforcement officers at Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Protection. These officers work tirelessly to secure our borders and ensure Americans remain safe from foreign threats. It is time for Congress to do the same. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we have H.R. 1346, the Nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act of 2025. This legislation allows the option to sell gasoline that is blended with 10% to 15% ethanol year-round. Furthermore, it provides additional reforms to the renewable fuel standard. Mr. Speaker, I look forward to consideration of these important pieces of legislation, and I urge passage of this rule. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Georgia reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the gentleman from Georgia for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
You're recognized.
Another week, Mr. Speaker, another chance for this Republican majority to show the American people what they actually care about. And once again, sadly, it's not affordability. It's not lowering prices. It is not the issues that my constituents raise with me at town halls back home. For 16 long months, Republicans have controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House. Republicans have been running the show for over a year now. And what have they done? Have they lowered prices? Not grocery prices, those are up. Not gas prices, those are up too. Not health care costs, those are up too. Not utilities or child care, those are more expensive than ever. That is the problem with winning power, Mr. Speaker. At some point, the problems you complain about become your problems. And if you fail to fix them, then that failure is yours. And that is where this Republican majority finds itself. You guys have failed to deliver, big time. Donald Trump promised he would end the war in Ukraine. Not only did he fail to do that, he started a new one in Iran. Republicans promised they would lower prices on day one. We are now in year 2. And where are prices? They're not down, they are up, way up. Ground beef, vegetables, fruit, sugar, it is all up according to Trump's own USDA. And whose fault is it? Democrats did not start the war with Iran that is driving up food and gas prices. Republicans did that. It wasn't Biden who put in place tariffs that are hurting American farmers and jacking up costs. Republicans did that. The left did not give massive tax breaks to billionaires paid for by stealing from the program working families use to buy groceries. Republicans did that. This administration and Republicans in Congress spent years claiming Democrats drove up prices and promising they would bring them down on day one. They failed. And if you want to know why, look no further than the bills on the floor this week. It is a greatest hits album of MAGA extremism, corporate giveaways, and political theater. A culture war bill targeting trans kids. A budget resolution that moves heaven and earth to give even more money to ICE and CBP, while FEMA, TSA, and the Coast Guard remain shut down because Speaker Johnson refuses to advance a bipartisan Senate agreement that would pass overwhelmingly if brought to the floor. A FISA bill that lets the government spy on Americans without proper warrant safeguards. And a farm bill that locks in long-term cuts to SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, after Trump's big, ugly bill stole nearly $200 billion from the program in order to give tax breaks to billionaires. We are talking about a food benefit that gives barely over $6 a day to some of the poorest people in this country, many working multiple jobs and still unable to make ends meet, and many others who are seniors, who are veterans, who are children, and Americans with disabilities. That is the meager benefit you guys cut to give tax breaks to rich people. Give me a break. And let's not forget the provision in this farm bill that helps chemical companies dump toxic chemicals into our food system, poisoning farm workers and polluting our air and water. Who the hell asked for that? Was it drafted in the Monsanto boardroom? I mean, thankfully, a popular bipartisan amendment was made in order by the committee to fix the provision. And while I'm glad that we will be able to take a vote on it and see where members lie on this issue, my hope is that it passes. It still doesn't fix the rest of this awful, terrible bill. Costs are up, corruption is up, chaos is up, and you guys are screwing over poor people. This is beyond outrageous. It is immoral. It is sick. It is wrong. And after huddling in back rooms and arguing among themselves, Republicans are now sending to the floor a year-round E-15 bill that get this, Mr. Speaker, that adds billions of dollars to the deficit. And they are doing it in a very clever way. Once the E-15 bill passes, it gets combined with the Farm Bill before it gets sent to the Senate. Where are my Freedom Caucus friends? Do you even know that this provision is in the bill? Do you even know what's going on here? I mean, billions and billions of dollars adding to the deficit. I thought you cared about the deficit, but apparently you don't. I mean, it's a reason to vote against this rule. And if you don't know about it, then the leadership of this House pulled a fast one on you. So since the day Trump took office last year, the national debt has gone up $2.8 trillion. Full Republican control has added nearly $3 trillion to the debt. And now we're adding billions more with another Republican backroom deal. I mean, during our Agriculture Committee markup, Chairman Thompson said over and over and over again that we had an obligation to remain budget neutral. He said that's why we couldn't do anything to address the horrible nutrition cuts, and that's why we couldn't do anything to provide any more support for our farmers, why we couldn't modernize our conservation programs. So we can't do any of those things, but if it's for war, or if it's for tax cuts for the rich, or for this E-15 bill, Republicans are more than happy to add to the debt. Got it. Mr. Speaker, people are struggling. They are working hard, and they are falling behind. And if Republicans spend half as much time lowering costs as they spend passing non-binding resolutions congratulating themselves, maybe we could actually get something done around here. But they can't help themselves. The billionaires say jump, and the Speaker asks how high. Monsanto says bail us out. The Republicans ask how much. Big tech, big ag, big oil, they all run wild. It is pathetic, Mr. Speaker, pathetic. The American people were promised lower costs. They were promised a Congress that would fight for them. They were lied to. And instead, they got extremism. They got a majority that wakes up every morning and asks how to make life easier for the rich and powerful. They got an administration and a Congress that covers up for Epstein elite pedophiles instead of fighting for everyday people. Enough already. This is an awful rule. It blocks 7 of 10 Republican amendments. It blocks 7 of 10 Republican amendments, 8 out of 10 bipartisan amendments, 9 out of 10 Democratic amendments. No member of this House has had an amendment debated on the floor in nearly 100 days. And now that we do, here's what we get. So in case it was not clear yet, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote no on this rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Members will remind that they direct comments to the chair.
Thank you,
Gentleman
Mr.
from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'm glad that the other gentleman brought up corruption. Certainly, we've seen what's going on in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and many of the other Democratic-run cities and states. And he brought up gas prices as well. And I'm thankful that Donald Trump has believed in energy independence, and gas prices are lower than they were under the Biden administration, even when we weren't at war, simply because of the stupid rules and regulations passed by that administration. I now yield 3 minutes to my friend from North Carolina, the chairwoman of the Rules Committee, Dr. Fox.
Chairwoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman for yielding and doing such a great job in handling this rule and being on the Rules Committee. I also want to thank the staff of the Rules Committee for the great work under very difficult circumstances almost every day, but especially this week. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to share with you and with all of our Republican colleagues an observation about the behavior of Democrats in the Rules Committee yesterday evening. Please listen carefully. Committee Democrats put on a real master class in how to sell fake altruism. Really, it was quite the spectacle, maybe even worthy of an Academy Award. What a performance it was. Mr. Speaker, our Democrat colleagues offered a handful of amendments authored by Republicans that proclaimed that they were standing up for these Republicans and their ideas. Could have fooled me. What the Democrats were doing was weaponizing the ideas of our Republican colleagues for their own gain. Their goal the entire time was never altruistic. It was never about supporting Republican amendments or even fighting for them. Their goal was to waste our time. Democrats treat time like they treat the tax dollars of Americans, with disregard and utter contempt. Their words and actions are always steeped in a vat of hypocrisy. Look at today, and they know it too. To those members of our conference who the Democrats used so callously last night and who are thinking about opposing the rule on the floor today, I simply say this: you are far better than falling for the fake altruism of those across the aisle who never supported you or the solutions you bring to the table, not once. Mr. Speaker, I support the rule and its 5 underlying measures, and I encourage all my colleagues to do the same. I yield back.
Senator from Georgia reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized.
First, let me say to my colleague from Georgia, keep bragging about gas prices and see how that works for you in November. And I ask unanimous consent to insert in the record an article entitled U.S. Gas Prices Hit Highest Levels Since the Beginning of War in Iran.
Objection.
And I would say to my friend, the distinguished chairwoman of the Rules Committee, we offered amendments because we haven't had a vote on an amendment in nearly 100 days. No Democrat and no Republican have been able to vote on an amendment in nearly 100 days. Mr. Van Orden, who's sitting there, we had 2 amendments that were blocked. Mr. Neguse offered one of them last night, and every Republican voted against it. And some of the amendments that we offered, quite frankly, I support. The Biggs Amendment on FISA, I support. And that was really an interesting display of theater because we had the votes, but one of the Republicans, Mr. Griffith, every time we brought it up, conveniently got up and walked out of the room so he didn't have to cast a vote. And we called it up several times, and he kept on walking out of the room. So if you want to talk about theater, that really does deserve an Academy Award. And there were a lot of other amendments, quite frankly, that we brought up that I support. And by the way, we brought up amendments that I don't support. But just because I don't support them doesn't mean they don't deserve to be debated on the House floor. And that's one of the problems with the Republican leadership right now in Congress. You don't believe that this place is a deliberative body. You know, I mean, this is you believe it's kind of your way or the highway. And it's not just Democrats that are getting locked out. I mean, there were, what's the percentage of Republican? 70% of Republican amendments. Most of them were germane. Some of them weren't even particularly controversial in any way, shape, or form. They were blocked. 80% of the bipartisan amendments were blocked. You know, and I know you don't care about Democrats, but well, 90% of our amendments were blocked. I mean, 70% of your own party were denied amendments in the Rules Committee. And again, it has been nearly 100 days since we've had a debate on any amendment, Republican or Democratic amendment. You know, so again, if that's how you all want this place to be run, you know, have at it. But I would urge my Republican colleagues to take a stand now. Say no to this. Say no to this. And I guarantee you it will change. But going along to get along has resulted in even Republican members being denied the right to offer their amendments. Mr. Speaker, I now would like to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Minnesota, the distinguished ranking member of the Committee on Agriculture, who has done an incredible job standing up for our farmers and for the most needy in this country, Ms. Craig.
Gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My Republican colleague mentioned Minneapolis. Let's talk about Minneapolis since it's a rules debate. Folks, in this rule is additional funding for ICE and CBP. Let's talk about Minneapolis. Let's talk about the fact that 2 U.S. citizens were murdered on the streets of Minneapolis. There is no way in hell Democrats are going to give one more penny to ICE and CBP until reforms are in place. So if you want to bring up Minneapolis, we can bring up Minneapolis, but you better bring it up with the full context of what the Trump administration is doing in our country that we will not stand for. Mr. Speaker, related to the Farm Bill, the Rules Committee had the opportunity to improve this legislation, which falls way short of the 5-year, 12-title Farm Bill that we should be here discussing today. We should have addressed the tariffs that are bankrupting America's family farmers. Folks, farm bankruptcies are up 50% across this country over the last year in the Trump administration. Farm bankruptcies are up 70% in the Midwest. Trump's trade wars are destroying American farmers. They're sending China to Brazil and Argentina for that business. Folks, when we think about what the Trump administration is doing, the Iran war, it's increased fertilizer cost. It's increased diesel prices. This is not putting America's farmers first. And anytime this president tells you that he loves you, ask him what his actions are doing to help you. We should have included additional farm aid. The Farm Bureau says farmers have lost $54 billion over the last year. $54 billion over the last year. And believe it or not, this administration said $12 billion. That's how much we're going to give our family farmers. We should have bolstered SNAP. At the end of the day, it is unconscionable to me that we used reconciliation to plus up crop insurance programs. Democrats would have supported that in a farm bill, and then cut SNAP by $187 billion. And don't say we didn't cut SNAP. That's absolute nonsense. What you did is you shifted the cost to states in our country, an unfunded mandate that is already increasing taxes in a state like Minnesota because our counties are having to raise property taxes for constituents to pay for it. And by the way, a lot of these constituents are Republican constituents. We should have rallied around a bill that helped family farmers and working families in this country. Instead, this rule opens the door for a bill that rubber stamps tariffs. It does nothing to lower costs on farm inputs. It opens the door for a bill that does not provide a single penny in additional farm aid. It locks in the $187 billion cut to SNAP that's already deprived 3.4 million Americans of food assistance. Greenlighting this rule and the underlying bill is sending a message to every American that Congress does not have their back. It sends a signal to farm country that they are on their own. This bill needs a do-over. My hope is the Senate will provide that do-over. It is not worthy of our support, and I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to vote no on this rule, and I yield back.
Having yielded? Again, the chair, members are reminded to direct comments towards the chair. With that, the gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And before we go any further, I would just like to remind the American citizens that under the Biden administration, over 82% of Farm Bill spending was going to SNAP, and they virtually eliminated any of the support for the American farm family. So again, Democrats demanded that over 80% of Farm Bill spending go to SNAP benefits. That's one of the reasons that the American farm family is suffering so hard today. I now yield 3 minutes to my friend from North Carolina, my friend from Arkansas, the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mr. Crawford.
Gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Thank the Speaker, and I thank my friend from Georgia for recognizing me. I rise in support of HRS 1224, the rule to consider S-1318, the Foreign Intelligence Accountability Act. This legislation makes further reforms to Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, and reauthorizes the authority for 3 years. FISA Section 702 is one of our country's most important foreign intelligence authorities, is limited to collection on foreign nationals based overseas who are likely to provide foreign intelligence value. These are terrorists, hackers, and spies living abroad. No U.S. citizen anywhere in the world can be a target under Section 702. While no U.S. person can be a target of FISA 702, some U.S. person information may incidentally be collected if a foreign target is talking to or about a U.S. person or entity. In 2024, in response to significant FBI abuses of both Section 702 and traditional FISA, Congress passed the Reforming Intelligence and Securing America Act, or RISA, which imposed 56 new requirements and safeguards. Most of the reform measures were directly in response to past abuses by the FBI. Reauthorizing FISA 702 is essential, but the reality is that despite the successful limits and reforms implemented through RISA, there is still major distrust of the FBI. Over the past weeks, alongside Speaker Johnson and Judiciary Chairman Jordan, we've met with members across the Republican conference to identify core requirements and go line by line through the legislation to make changes and address concerns with the goal of reauthorizing Section 702 and requiring additional layers of accountability. The reality is that no reauthorization effort will likely address everyone's concerns, but this bill makes measurable reforms to strengthen accountability and safeguards while maintaining the criticality of the foreign intelligence tool. Specifically, the new legislation adds the following 6 new provisions. Clarifies that no U.S. person can be a target of 702 collection, and any targeting of a U.S. person requires a Title I or Title III warrant. Requires an outside review and authentication of FBI U.S. person queries by the Civil Liberty Protection Office at the Office of the National Director of National Intelligence. Establishes criminal penalties for intentional abuse of FISA 702 queries and falsification of statements to the FISC. Requires DOJ to update procedures to allow members to attend FISC hearings. Requires FBI attorney pre-approval of all FBI U.S. person queries, and mandates an independent audit by the Government Accountability Office on 702 targeting procedures. With these important reforms, the bill includes a reauthorization for FISA 702 authorities for 3 years. In addition to the Section 702 reforms, the rule adds H.R. 1919, Anti-CBP Surveillance State Act, to the underlying bill. This bill blocks the Federal Reserve from issuing a central bank digital currency to individuals, thereby preventing the Fed from collecting personal financial data on Americans. The anti-CBDC bill has passed the House 2 times already this Congress, and I was proud to support it both times. I want to thank Whip Emmer for introducing it and Financial Services Chair French Hill for moving it through committee and working with us to attach it to the Section 702 extension. When this bill is sent to the Senate, I urge them to pass the combined measure, and I urge all members to support the rule and the underlying bill, and with that, I yield.
I reserve.
Gentleman from Georgia reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts
Thank you,
is
Madam
now
Speaker.
recognized.
Madam Speaker, I just want to say to the gentleman who just spoke, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, I have great respect for him, but that's a lot of words basically to say that Democrats and Republicans will be denied the right to be able to debate and vote on a warrant requirement. Mr. Speaker, I've already spoken about how terrible the bills in this rule are, but let me just take a minute to talk about how much of a dumpster fire the last 48 hours have been from a process standpoint. Because the way this place is being run by your so-called leadership, Madam Speaker, is beyond incompetent. It's pathetic. We spent all night waiting around while Republicans fought amongst themselves. We were told nearly at midnight on Monday to go home. We were then told rules would meet at 8 a.m. on Tuesday. We showed up for that meeting only to be told there would be no meeting because Republicans were still busy fighting with each other. Madam Speaker, you guys had all weekend. Didn't you think to do a Zoom call or something like that with your members to find out where they were? On FISA, this thing has been going on for weeks. Didn't you have a meeting or a phone call or a text thread or something to try to work that out? And finally, at long last, we convened and reported out a rule. But based on public reporting, it is not clear whether the rule that we are debating right now can pass. So what the hell are we doing here? I mean, can somebody please call the Republican whip and ask his office if they have the votes? Maybe ask them if they know how to count. We keep running around in circles here, Madam Speaker, and I will tell you why. Because you guys have a tiny, slim majority, and rather than trying to work things out with Democrats, you cut us out of the process. And the result is endless chaos, endless incompetence, endless delay, and every day Americans are the one who pay the price. Here's just one example. Democrats tried to make in order many Republican amendments in the Rules Committee last night. One of them, authored by Representative Biggs, would require a warrant before the government spies on Americans. Last time the amendment came to the floor, it tied. So clearly, this is an important issue with members of both parties on both sides. It's exactly the kind of debate Congress should be having out in the open. But what did Republicans do? Well, there were 2 Republicans who voted with us to bring the amendment to the floor. Again, an amendment to make sure that government can't spy on Americans without warrants. That was what the amendment was. But then a 3rd Republican, as I mentioned before, kept getting up and leaving the room every time we called a vote. I mean, it was really comical. So that's why we won't be having a floor debate. And again, a Republican amendment, that was a Republican amendment we tried to bring to the floor, blocked by a Republican who literally had to get up and leave the room because if he didn't, it would pass. I just wonder who asked him to leave. I mean, what an embarrassment for this institution. And for the record, it isn't just one amendment Republicans have blocked here. It is hundreds. 7 out of 10 Republican amendments are blocked. 8 out of 10 bipartisan amendments are blocked. 9 out of 10 Democratic amendments are blocked. Let me repeat that. 9 out of 10 Democratic amendments are blocked in this rule. Over 50 times in the Rules Committee last night, we asked to simply have an up or down vote on these important issues on the floor. Over 50 times we were blocked. And I understand my ideas won't always prevail and win, but to not even be able to get a vote, I mean, what the hell are Republicans afraid of? Isn't it our job to debate and to vote? And for the record, this is an interesting statistic. For the record, we had more amendment votes in the Rules Committee last night than we have had on the House floor this entire year. So that is not okay. We call ourselves one of the greatest deliberative bodies of the world, and we aren't deliberating on anything, for God's sakes. Republican leaders are blocking nearly every amendment, and that is what this rule does. It blocks idea after idea after idea from being debated and voted on. We can't debate more aid for farmers. We can't debate more help for hungry families. We have Republican members who are publicly threatening to take down this rule because their amendments were blocked too. I disagree strongly with some of their ideas. I would vote no, but they deserve a vote, don't they? These bills are take it or leave it. The leadership dictates every single letter, every comma. This is no way to run this place. It is no way to run a banana stand. It is pathetic. It is a disgrace. And the Speaker and the majority ought to be embarrassed by what is going on here. You're screwing over your own members. Madam Speaker, you write bad bills and you block good ideas. You refuse to work with Democrats in a bipartisan way. You bend over backwards to appease the people in your conference who have no interest in governing. And to further expand on what I have been talking about, I want to yield 3 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Colorado, a member of the Rules Committee who was there during the entire fiasco in the Rules Committee yesterday, Mr. Neguse.
Representative Neguse is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, let me say thank you to the distinguished ranking member of the Rules Committee for his principled leadership. I think it's well understood by most Americans that Congress is broken, that Congress is deeply dysfunctional. But for anyone who is looking for another data point, we have one this morning. The Republican Rules Committee chairwoman criticizing, attacking Democratic members of the Rules Committee for trying to get a vote on Republican amendments. Think about that. The amendments that we offered last night, that I offered last night, were not mine. They were amendments from members of the Republican conference. And for having the audacity to suggest that Republican ideas and Democratic ideas ought to be considered on the floor of the House in this august chamber, we have the Republican chairwoman attacking even the concept that a Democratic member of Congress could dare introduce a Republican amendment. For Ms. Boebert, for Mr. Van Orden, for Ms. Miller-Meeks, for Mr. Stubbe, go down the line. Vote after vote after vote. 2/3 of Republican amendments were rejected by the Republican Rules Committee. Why? What are we afraid of? This ought to be the chamber where we can have a reasoned, objective debate and let the chips fall where they may. I think it is deeply offensive to those Republican members, to the members of my conference, and fundamentally to the American people to suggest to them that we aren't capable of having that debate. And just to be clear on the substance, because I've heard a lot of bluster today, it is shocking to me to hear my colleagues lecture us about fiscal responsibility as they preside over the highest debt in the history of the Republic. To hear them pontificate about fighting for working families as they enact the largest cut to SNAP, to food assistance for hungry families in the history of the country. Madam Speaker, they sermonize about fraud and corruption, while the Trump administration engages in wholesale corruption daily and they do nothing about it. President Trump, right now, is suing the IRS for a $10 billion shakedown. Think about it. He's suing the federal government that he controls. A check for $10 billion that he hopes to secure that will go to Donald Trump, signed by Donald Trump. And who's paying the check? The American taxpayers. You want to root out corruption? Let's start there.
Gentleman's time's up.
I yield the gentleman additional 1 minute.
Okay, gentleman has 1 additional minute.
Madam Speaker, it is absurd. It is unconscionable. It is outrageous. So I would just say to the gentleman from Georgia, whom I respect, I understand his arguments on the merits of some of these bills, but spare us the pious lectures, please, especially about corruption. Not while President Trump is suing the Justice Department and suing the IRS and trying to secure more money from hardworking taxpayers in our country. Please. And for my Republican colleagues who are debating whether to vote on this procedural rule, just remember that when you had an important issue that you wanted debated on the House floor, your conference rejected that debate. If you're interested in pesticide immunity or the regulation of field trip forms for middle schoolers, yes, they have you covered. This rule encompasses all of that. But if you have a particular issue that's important to your constituency or your district, you're out of luck. I yield back.
A gentleman from Georgia is now recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to my friend from Wisconsin, Mr. Van Orden.
Gentleman from Wisconsin is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Madam Speaker, I'd like to take a second to thank my Democrat colleagues for acknowledging my amendments. I will be sending them my entire list of legislative priorities for their co-sponsorship. I stand here today to strongly support the E15 year-round codification. For the past 5 years, the EPA has been using data that is older than some of the members of this body. They've issued an emergency extension for E15 for the reason that, they've issued for 5 years in a row, the EPA has issued an emergency waiver for the use of E15 year-round because of the data sources that they've been using. Under the leadership of President Trump and Lee Zeldin, we're now going to use data from this century, and it's critically important. This is what that data has shown. E15 is environmentally sound, it's readily available, it's reliable, and most importantly, it is affordable. So, Madam Speaker, I strongly urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to vote for this rule and for the underlying legislation. And with that, I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is now recognized.
Yeah, I just want to remind the gentleman from Wisconsin, he's in the majority party, and 100% of his amendments were blocked. I don't know what he did to tick off Mr. Scott of Georgia, but he voted against your amendments in the Rules Committee last night. And by the way, I'm somebody who believes that we ought to debate amendments, even the ones that I don't always agree with. because I think this is a place where a diversity of opinion and ideas ought to be brought to the floor and ought to be debated. I'm sorry that the gentleman doesn't share that passion, but I will tell you this: if you vote for this rule, as you just said you would, you can look forward to your future amendments being blocked by the majority in your own party, because that is what they have been doing. We haven't had a debate on a single amendment on this floor in nearly 100 days. I'm not okay with that. And I hope my Republican colleagues are not okay with that either. And you ought to send a message to your leadership that this BS has to stop now. That individual members have to be respected and their ideas need to be brought to the floor. And I would just say the final thing on the E15 matter. I think it's a legitimate issue. Our problem with it is that we're told we can't address the issue of hunger and food insecurity because it adds to the deficit and the debt. The Republican leadership in here knows that the Office of Management and Budget has said that the E15 provision will cost billions with the B, and rather than offset it, you came up with a clever way to vote on it separately and then merge it with the Farm Bill at the end and send it to the Senate. Again, none of this is paid for. What happened to fiscal responsibility? I guess when it comes to helping poor people, everybody on that side is, oh, we can't do it because we got to be fiscally responsible. But on other things, the sky's the limit. I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Oregon, Ms. Dexter.
Gentlewoman from Oregon is now recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the distinguished ranking member for yielding. At a time when too many Americans are struggling to afford groceries, Congress should be working together to help feed working families. We could be expanding access to fruit and vegetables and investing in the food as medicine programs that keep people healthy and out of the hospital. Instead, we are considering a betrayal of a farm bill that cuts food assistance for millions and fails our farmers. Let me be clear. Hunger is a health issue. Hunger is a policy choice. I spent 20 years caring for the sickest patients in my community, and I know how food insecurity results in illness. I saw patients who delayed care to be able to put food on the table, only to end up in the hospital even sicker. People who couldn't afford the healthy food to manage their hypertension, diabetes, or heart disease. This bill makes impossible choices harder. We need a farm bill that helps farmers feed Americans and helps families afford that food. This bill does neither. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the rule and instead work to advance solutions that actually help families. I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Georgia is now recognized.
Madam Speaker, starving farmers the way the Democrats did over the last several years, where they took and put 82% of Farm Bill spending into SNAP benefits, doesn't allow farmers the resources they need to grow the food that hungry people need. We exempted anybody under 18 from the changes we made. Anybody over 65 was exempted from the changes that we made. Anybody who's medically or psychologically disabled and unable to work is exempt from the changes we made. Anybody who puts in the effort to work 20 hours a week is exempt from the changes we made. Madam Speaker, with that, I yield 1.5 minutes to my friend from Kansas, Mr. Mann, who's done tremendous work on the Farm Bill and the E15.
Gentleman from Kansas is now recognized.
I want to thank the gentleman, my friend from Georgia, for all his efforts to get this passed. Madam Speaker, I rise today in strong support of the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026 and urge my colleagues to pass this critical legislation and the rule to bring it to the floor. The last full Farm Bill was passed in 2018. Since then, input costs have risen, borrowing has become more expensive, and markets have grown more volatile. Our policies must reflect that reality. Last year, we took an important step forward by strengthening the farm safety net and delivering meaningful support for producers through the Working Families Tax Cuts. This bill now builds on that foundation. It delivers a modern, fiscally responsible 5-year farm bill that meets the needs of today's producers and prepares American agriculture for the future. This bill is grounded in fiscal responsibility. It provides certainty without growing government for the sake of growing government. It cuts through unnecessary red tape and focuses on what actually works for producers on the ground. I urge my colleagues to support the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026. I also rise in strong support of year-round E15 and specifically the nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act, which finally makes it a reality. In the Big First District of Kansas, agriculture is the backbone of our economy and our way of life. Our farmers work hard every day to produce the feedstocks that power American ethanol. Expanding access to E15 means stronger markets and better prices for consumers and more certainty. Mr. Speaker, this is a win for farmers, a win for consumers, and a win for American energy. I urge my colleagues to vote yes for H.R. 1346 and support year-round E15.
Madam Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'm sorry my colleague from Georgia doesn't believe that we can help both farmers and hungry families, but I do, and that's what I'm fighting for. I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Kamliger-Dove.
Gentlewoman from California is now recognized.
Madam Speaker, today I rise in strong opposition to this rule and all the things. These bills are problematic and dangerous and will not make gas prices lower or feed families. The FISA bill will allow the government to over-surveil Americans. The Farm Bill will keep the cuts to SNAP benefits and food pantries while protecting large corporations that put pesticides in your food. The budget bill will fund the murderous ICE and Border Patrol to the tune of $140 billion without accountability, and the anti-trans bill will continue to demonize the trans community. These bills are not just dangerous, they could kill people. And Madam Speaker, to load all of these sinister bills together and try to stuff them down the throats of Americans already choking on the incompetence of the majority is disingenuous and delusional. No on the rule, no on the floor, just no. Enough is enough. And with that, I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Georgia is again recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 2 minutes to my friend from Indiana, Mr. Baird.
Gentleman from Indiana is now recognized.
Thank you, Representative Scott. Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026. In my district, agriculture isn't just a part of the economy, it is the economy. Our corn and soybean farmers feed our country, and they fuel our bioeconomy, and they supply global markets, all while operating in tight margins and managing significant risk. This bill provides the certainty they need to plan, invest, and sustain operations that often span generations. I also strengthened this critical link between research and production. Institutions like Purdue University are driving advances in crop science, soil health, precision agriculture, and supply chain resilience, moving the innovation from the lab to the field and keeping American agriculture globally competitive. I'm especially pleased this legislation includes provisions I've worked on to expand access to the technical expertise for conservation, strengthen local and regional processing capacity, and improve coordination between the leading research agencies and provide clarity for emerging agricultural technologies. These are the practical steps that help farmers adopt innovation and build more resilient supply chains. Just as important, this bill reaffirms a strong commitment to science-based standards, particularly at the Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA's rigorous and data-driven review process ensures farmers have access to safe and effective crop protection tools while protecting consumers and the environment. We must maintain the gold standard while also ensuring that reviews are timely and predictable so American producers remain competitive. This bill strengthens farm programs, invests in conservation, supports our rural communities, and it is about stability, innovation, and national security. I urge my colleagues on both sides to support this legislation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Madam Speaker, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Madam Speaker, if we defeat the previous question, I will offer an amendment to the rule to adopt a Senate amendment to H.R. 7147, the bipartisan compromise bill that the Senate unanimously passed twice now to fund all the law-abiding agencies under the Department of Homeland Security. Enough is enough. This is the deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security while we discuss changes in ICE and CBP. It is a bipartisan measure. It passed unanimously in the Senate twice. The situation is so dire now that even the White House has sent a letter urging the House to pass the bill. So I'm once again giving all members of this body a chance to do what is the right thing and to provide a vote on this bipartisan DHS bill. Stop the games. Stop the games. I ask unanimous consent to insert the text of my amendment into the record along with any extraneous material immediately prior to the vote on the previous question.
Without objection.
I urge all members to reject this madness and the games my friends are playing on the other side of the aisle and vote no on the previous question so we can fund, finally, DHS. I reserve.
Reserves. Gentleman
Madam
from
Speaker,
Georgia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'm not aware of any recorded vote on the floor of the United States Senate. I'm aware of a couple of actions being taken when nobody was on the floor of the United States Senate, but not aware of any recorded vote. I now yield 2 minutes to my friend from Iowa, Mr. Nunn, who's done tremendous work on the Farm Bill and the E15 issue.
Gentleman from Iowa is now recognized.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Austin Scott, for your leadership on this Farm Bill. Look, I'm from Iowa. We're home to 87,000 proud farmers. We're the home of American Gothic, and we're home to some of the best technology, particularly in ag, that this country's ever seen and the world can benefit from. That's why it's so important that we move forward a Farm Bill this year that helps not just farmers, but everyone in this country, and leads with energy and biofuels the world over. I'm speaking specifically to year-round nationwide E15. Not only is it 30 cents cheaper at the pump, not only is it 50% more fuel efficient and cleaner for us, not only does it bleed off our need right now for foreign energy sources, it starts right here in America. And here's the reality. For the last 4 years under the Biden administration, when gas hit its highest price of over $5 a gallon, we have the opportunity to rein it in with this. The reality is we've done more in the last 4 months than the administration has done, the past administration, over the last 4 years. We've moved forward on summer waivers with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. We worked for 45Z, and we've helped sustainable aviation fuel. But Iowa's producers shouldn't have to win it back every single year. We should make this permanent, year-round, nationwide, and help not only farmers grow, but consumers, like my 6 kids, have a more affordable cost of living right here in Iowa, right here in America. The 21 counties across Iowa that I've passed through, they have all asked for certainty. This bill delivers it. I urge my colleagues who have supported this in a bipartisan fashion, Republicans and Democrats, that we can have energy independence right here in America with E15 year-round nationwide. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Great credit to Mr. Nunn and the Iowa delegation, as well as many others, for their work on the E15 issue and the Farm Bill. Thank you. I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I just wish the E15 measure was paid for and wasn't going to explode the deficit. But I yield now 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from New Mexico, Ms. Stansbury.
Gentlewoman from New Mexico is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I am appalled by what is coming before us on the floor today, all wrapped up in one big, ugly rule. Billions for ICE, warrantless searches on Americans, locking cuts that cut millions of American children's access to food. While working Americans are struggling to put food on the table and a roof over their head, farmers are wondering how they're going to weather drought and tariffs and soaring fuel and fertilizer prices. And what are Republicans bringing to the floor in this House? They are handing ICE another blank check. They are forcing a farm bill that fails our farmers and ranchers and gives big corporations handouts. And on top of that, another FISA bill that gives a backdoor to spy on Americans. This is not governing. It is a dereliction of duty. So stop gaslighting the American people. Our farmers need relief. Our families need help. And the hard-working people of this country need you to show up for them, to stand up for the American people. So enough of this chaos, enough of this cruelty, and enough of this corruption. We must vote no. I yield back.
I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I would just remind this young lady, New Mexico has experienced a historic financial boom driven by what President Trump has done in unleashing America's domestic energy production. And I think it was a Senate leader that said they had more money than they could figure out how to spend in New Mexico. And with that, I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized again.
I'm prepared to close. I don't know how many more. Madam Speaker, how much time do I have remaining?
Gentleman has 30 seconds left.
That's it? Okay. I yield myself the remaining time.
The gentleman yields.
Madam
Gentleman
Speaker.
is recognized.
Okay. Yeah. Madam Speaker, prices are up. Debate in this House is down. You know, we're debating culture war nonsense instead of adhering to an affordability agenda. We're giving more money to ICE and CBP that are lawless, that don't need any more money, and we're giving more tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. Farmers are getting screwed over. Poor people are getting screwed over. Hunger is going up in this country. And enough is enough. Enough is enough. My friends on the other side do not care. And I would say to my Republican colleagues, if you are tired of getting rolled by your own leadership, then vote no on this rule. Vote no on this rule. Send a message to them that you want this place to be a forum where we debate real issues.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Madam Chair, Customs and Border Protection is an extremely important part of protecting the United States of America. And while the Democrats might want to eliminate Customs and Border Protection so that they can open the borders wide up, the American citizens want those borders secure. Now, this week, the House has the ability to advance 5 pieces of legislation. The Farm, Food, and National Security Act, representing years of committee efforts and stakeholder engagement, strengthening rural America, improving conservation tools, and supporting American producers. The Foreign Intelligence Accountability Act reauthorizes Section 702 with reforms providing the continued ability to collect intelligence on foreign nationals overseas who are reasonably believed to possess foreign intelligence information in order to stop terrorist attacks on United States soil. Again, stopping terrorist attacks on United States soil. We have no idea who you let in this country over the last several years. The Stopping Indoctrination and Protecting Kids Act supports parents, strengthens transparency, and protects our children in educational environments. The budget resolution is an essential first step towards ending the Democrat-driven shutdown of DHS and strengthening our nation's national securities and keeping our borders secure, which is what your real opposition is to the Department of Homeland Security. Finally, the Nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act allows the option to sell gasoline that is blended with 10% to 15% ethanol year-round and provides additional reforms to the renewable fuel standard. Together, these measures advance our commitments to American families, American producers, responsible stewardship of taxpayer dollars. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting yes on the previous question and yes on the rule. Madam Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question on the resolution so that we can keep America's borders secure.
The gentleman yields. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays. I mean,
okay.
A little.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote on the question of adoption of the resolution if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote.